Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining our diagnostic training session today. Now, what you're about to see is a pre-recorded training session we did over in the United States. But be assured that a lot of the material that we cover is really applicable to any automotive application. So just be aware that yes, it is a lot of North American vehicles, but a lot of the same principles apply over in the UK as well. Now, if you have any questions, if you're watching this during the premiere, you can just leave it in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. And if you're watching this after the premiere, then just feel free to leave a comment underneath the video, and we'll get to those as we can as well. So my name is Jason Gabrenas. I'm one of Snap-on Diagnostics technical trainers. I've been in the training department since 2013, traveling around North America, helping techs and shop owners get the most out of their diagnostic equipment. Before I did that, it was a couple years as a diagnostic sales rep at Snap-on, so I had a group of about 30 different franchisees I worked with, as well as the shops that they service, in order to help everyone get the most out of their diagnostic needs. Then before I did that, it was 8 years at Subaru, so I worked in a dealership, and over time, I guess, I just became that default diag guy in the shop. So I always ended up having the drivability problems, the intermittent problems, the weird wiring problems that would show up on those cars. And that's really where I cut my diagnostic teeth, was trying to figure out all those weird head scratcher type cars that had come into my bay. Then before that, a bunch of other miscellaneous wrenching jobs. Been a little over 25 years under hood experience for me. Our topic at hand today is going to be automatic transmission special functions. Now, we talked kind of about a few months ago about automatic transmission, just kind of their workings and diagnosing them. But there are some special functions that need to be done, a lot of relearn type things that need to be done. So we're going to talk through that and some things that are available on the Snap-on tool. So transmission types first. Let's just kind of get get a good baseline as to what we're talking about and what kinds of transmissions we're talking about. So the tried and true good old hydraulic automatic's been around for a long time, and it works in a. They all pretty much work basically the same. You got your planetary gear sets and your clutch packs and things like that, and your bands. Just to go through different gear ratios going through this. Now, this is not a transmission operations class by any means, but if you've had one of these apart, they're all very similar in how they work. When it's just your straight up, regular hydraulic automatic transmission that's out there. Been around for a long time, like I said. VW and Audi have a dual shift gearbox that they call it, and that's kind of unique. So it's kind of like a hybrid between an automatic transmission and a manual transmission, but it's more on the manual transmission side of things. So if we take a look at this cutaway, you can see that, yep, that sure does look like a manual transmission inside. You got synchros and stuff like that. But we have the mechatronics right here. So these are a bunch of solenoids that will move things around and in and out. So what is unique about this is that dual input shafts. So there's a larger one and a smaller one. And they run pretty much the even gears and the odd gears. Right. So you can see how they kind of slide in to each other. And then not only does it have dual input shafts, it also has dual clutches. So we can see how the clutch kind of moves. This would be on, of course, the wider one, and this would be on the smaller one that's in the middle. Right. So we have two pressure plates, two clutches, and the wheel in the middle. Right. So that is kind of how that works. So it's got two different clutch forks and all that good stuff. Right. So it's just double of everything. When, like I said, one side runs the even gears, one side runs the odd gears, basically. And there are some relearns needed to be done on that. And there are some maintenance functions that we're going to talk about a little bit later when we get into the bay. So stay tuned for that. BMW also has a dual clutch transmission. However, it works a little bit differently. So it is hydraulically controlled once again. But as you can see in here, that kind of looks like a bunch of friction material, right? So that is like the hydraulic automatic transmission, the friction material that's in there. This does have tool input shafts, just like on the VW, but instead of having like a traditional like clutch, right? So like clutch media and all that, it has these clutch packs. So you have a clutch pack on one side, and the other gear set has the other set of clutches, right? So we got two sets of clutches. Works on the similar principle, but a slightly different design. And of course, there's a bunch of different tests and functions and resets that need to be done on that. Then we have CVTs. So CVTs have been around for a fair amount of time now. Nissan famously used them in pretty much everything. Subaru uses them a lot. A lot of other OEMs use it. But interestingly enough, what it was designed for is so you really can't tell the shift points, right? It's just supposed to give you a nice smooth acceleration because the pulleys change width, right? So that changes my gear ratio, and it's an infinitely selectable gear ratio if you think about it that way. Problem was, the first ones, that's all well and good, but the customers are starting to complain about, well, I can't feel the shifts, so I don't know when it's shifting. And a lot of complaints we would hear is, oh yeah, I got caught speeding because I didn't realize I was going that fast, because it just stays steady at like 2,500, 3,000 RPM, and you just go, right? So had some issues with that. So I know on the newer models, they have actually put into the transmission control module some shift points, so it actually feels like it's shifting, even though it's technically doesn't have to give you that motion, that feeling, but they just kind of put it in there. I guess they must change the pulleys in a more jerky fashion. I'm not 100% sure how they designed that in, but it is a thing. You can be driving a CVT vehicle and it might feel like it's a regular automatic transmission, and it really isn't. It is indeed a CVT. So kind of interesting there. So in order to operate the transmissions, these automatic transmissions, they all rely on some sort of a solenoid type thing going on. So we have a couple different types of solenoids that may be found in a transmission. So we have an on-off solenoid, so that just like it says on the tin, it's on or off. Computer controls the ground side. So usually an open or close function. It doesn't have to be like it's either on or off, basically. So it's either fully open or fully closed. Sometimes it's part of the valve body. Because of that fact, it can be difficult to access depending on the vehicle. And here's just an example. This is on a Subaru. It's on their shift solenoids. So you see first, second, third, and fourth, and they're on-off solenoids. So they get first gear, 1 and 2 are on. Second gear, 1 is off, 2 is on. Third gear, both are off. And then fourth gear, 1 is on and 2 is off, right? So it has 4 different solenoids in there, and they're on-off. And then if we come down here, it just gives us the apply chart down here. Other solenoids could be a pulse width modulated solenoid. So it's a modulated on-off operation, which means we can open and close it a certain amount depending on what the manufacturer is wanting. The computer controls power or the ground side depending on the manufacturer, how they want to do it. And it's an open close percentage. So if I was going to check it PID data or with a scope, it is going to be a percentage of on time. Sometimes part of the valve body, due to that, also once again can be difficult to access. So this is on a 2014 Ford Explorer, and the torque converter clutch solenoid is a pulse width modulated solenoid, right? So you can see, looking at it through the scope there, there's my percentage. So it went from 40% up to like 60%, up to like 70%, up to like 80%, right? And then if we come down here, this is on a Camaro. So the different solenoids, whether they're on or off, and what the pulse widths could be, can have kind of just a little bit of both in there, right? And then down here, we have the commanded pressure changes versus the actual pressures that you're going to see. Also coming to solenoids, talking about solenoids, recently added in the software is guided component tests for Nissan. And this is a wonderful picture of a valve body that I thought originally came from Nissan. But actually, we now have a graphic artist on staff who's been drawing up these lovely pictures that shows all the different solenoids and things like that. So I thought that was kind of cool, and now we have some more tests available for us. But I thought the graphic was pretty helpful there. So also, speaking of solenoids and in the valve body, this is on a Ford transmission. And we have multiple solenoids here. You can see we have 7 different solenoids, and kind of the brackets that go along with it. Now, those are in the valve body. You can get to them, but it's not terribly easy. You got to take a bunch of stuff apart. And then how do I know which one to order? How do I know which one is in there without actually physically, dropping down the pan and taking a look? Well, on the on the solenoid, it's got a number on it, and you need that number in order to know which one you need to order. So in this example, use the solenoid exploded view at the beginning of this procedure to identify the type, normally high or normally low of the solenoid, it is, and use the charts below to get the correct part number for the solenoid band number. Lubricate the O-rings with clean transmission fluid. So band number, so if I had a band number 3 there, and if it's normally high, that's the part number. And if I had a band number 3 there and it's normally low, it's that part number, right? So how do I do this? So there is a function, like I said, for this in order to be able to tell with the scan tool. Now this example is on a 2012, but I've seen them all the way up until pretty much current day to do solenoid characterization on those. So if we see in here, go into the transmission, then we go into functional tests. There we go. And then it is transmission characterization and solenoid identification. So there's two different tests in there. We'll cycle the key. And then the first one here is transmission characterization. So that'll tell us what kind of transmission it is. This function is used to read the transmission strategy and identification from the module. Refer to the vehicle workshop manual for further system details. We hit continue. Confirm the following. In this case, 6R140, 13-digit solenoid body strategy, 8-digit solenoid identification. Is that correct? We'll hit yes. Current transmission strategy and identification are displayed. So there it is. Now this is on demo software, so these are nonsense numbers, but transmission identification and strategy should match the service tag on the transmission. Tag on the 6F or 6R transmission is missing. Damage with strategy identification does not match the tag. It may be necessary to remove the main control cover and obtain the identification and strategy information from the solenoid body itself. All right, so that test is done. Then we can go into the bands. And this function is used to obtain the transmission solenoid band information for ordering individual replacement solenoids. Refer to the vehicle workshop manual for further system details. Not supported on all transmissions. In this case, it is. We'll continue. There's confirming the transmission again. Yes. Okay, the function will provide transmission solenoid band information for individual solenoid placement. Solenoid body strategy or identification will be required to obtain the bands. The function can be obtained from the modular transmission service tag. And then going to show you the strategy again. So really, I guess you didn't have to go into the other screen. It's going to kind of do it all together in this particular instance. And then it gets into here. So it tells you, okay, so A is normally low, base is this, element is this, band is this, right? So it's just going to walk you through. Here's what's installed in the truck. If I know I need to replace shift solenoid A, now I know which one I can order based on that chart we had earlier, right? So that's, I would say, a pretty helpful test if you're working on a lot of Ford transmissions. And then there's also adaptives. So adaptives need to be set or cleared with the scan tool, right? So in this case, we're talking about a 14 Dodge Challenger. So driving style adaptation. Shift point is modified in steps based on the information from the inputs. The control module looks at inputs such as the vehicle acceleration and decel, rate of change as well as position of the throttle pedal, lateral acceleration, and gear change frequency. Based on how aggressive the driver is, the TCM moves up the shift so that the present gear is held a little longer before the next upshift. If the driving style is still aggressive, the shift point is modified up to 10 steps. If the driving returns to normal, then shift point modification also returns to the base position. The adaptation has no memory. The adaptation of driving style is nothing more than a shift point modification meant to assist an aggressive driver. The shift points are adjusted the moment and return to base position as soon as the inputs are controlled in a more normal manner. So that is just kind of real time doing that. And then they also, with Chevy, pretty popular is the service fast learn adapts. So that's a procedure for 6-speed automatic transmissions in which a series of tests are run to allow the transmission control module to learn individual clutch characteristics, because when I do work on that, things could change. Once the clutch data is learned, service fast learn adapts translates into adaptive data cells, which the TCM uses for clutch control during shifts. And then we need to do it during internal service or overhaul, valve body repair or replacement, control solenoid valve assembly replacement, TCM software calibration update, or any service in response to a shift quality concern. Also note that you need to meet these particular conditions. Driving wheels blocked, parking brake applied, service brake applied, 0% throttle and no external engine RPM control. Transmission fluid temperature needs to be between 70 and 115 Celsius. And transmission gear selector has been cycled from park to reverse 3 times in order to purge air from the reverse clutches. So all of those definitely need to be met. And we're going to see when we go out in the shop that if you don't meet them all, you might have some issues. Spoiler alert, I might have had a small issue doing this example in the shop, but that's okay. We got through it. All right, and then there's another function that was recently added into our software. It's the Hyundai IVT pressure learn. So on the transmissions on the Hyundai, they do have a QR code, but not all of our tools have cameras. So in order to do that, there's also a tag on there. And you need to add in all of these numbers. I apologize for how grainy the picture is, but this is how it came out of service information. But you would go into transmission, you would go into system tests, And then you would go into oil pressure characteristics input, AT or valve body replacement. So if you replace the transmission or the valve body, this needs to be replaced. You can also back up an input if you're just doing a TCU replacement. So it backs it up to the scan tool, and then you can write those values into the new TCM. Okay, this function allows to enter barcode information and insert it to TCU and change the transmission. Key needs to be on, engine stop, shift lever and park, vehicle speed not moving. So then it has these lines, and it says, please enter barcode. So the first one's going to be that top row of numbers. So it's going to be these right here. So the YAER, etc. So you're going to plug that in, and there are no spaces, there are no gaps. I know on the tag it showed there was a gap in between, but there are no spaces, no gaps. So plug that in, hit enter, then it would come back. We need to do the next line, type it in, hit enter, next line, type it in, hit enter. And notice how there's only a certain number of characters. It is 16 digits. So 0 to F. So it's like base 16, basically, or hex. Next line, punch it in. And then the last line is only 4 digits. So you punch that in, hit enter. It's going to confirm. You want to just confirm all of those are correct. If so, hit OK. And then it's going to double check and make sure. Notice how this kind of looks a little bit more like the tag. This data is oil pressure characteristics. Before inputting the characteristics, ensure the characteristics are right. If you want to input it to a new TCU, press OK. So we'll hit OK. All right, now let's go live to me in the shop, and we'll walk you through that procedure I was talking about a little bit earlier.
All right, so today in the shop we have a 22 Volkswagen, and it has the dual clutch transmission in it, the DSG, and it also has all-wheel drive in it. So the first thing I kind of wanted to do was give you a lay of the land, kind of show you around underneath here. So I'll grab my little portable. And we can see there's the front of the vehicle there, and there's where the flywheel, you can access the flywheel there. Here's the pan, that's where all the mechatronics reside in there, so you would take that pan off to service any of the mechatronics. Of course, there's fluid in there. And then we have the center differential. Right, so we see one of the axles go down there, and then we have the prop shaft that goes down the center. And then we have the rear differential, and this one has an electronically actuated rear differential as well. So we can see we have the unit there, the actuator unit there, and then of course the other axles there. And then up front, what we're going to see is unique to this transmission, at least unique to what I've seen anyways, is you drain it, you fill it, you check it all through this one plug. So it doesn't have a dipstick, it doesn't have a top fill or anything like that. Everything gets done through here. So I'll put up some graphics on the screen here, I think, and kind of show you how they would walk through how to do that. But there's a special fill tube for it. There's a special way to drain it. There is a tube in here that kind of goes up above the fluid, and that allows you to make sure the fluid is at the proper level. So like I said, I'll put a graphic up for that. And then in order to do that function, you need to use the scan tool. So pull out the scan tool and go to transmission, of course. And then we will go to functional tests and then special functions. And then you see we have adaptations in there, basic settings in there, and then we also have check oil level. So following steps are performed in this test program. Check the transmission fluid level. Ignition needs to be on. We'll go in there. Select lever needs to be in P. Vehicle on a flat level surface, or I guess on a lift. Lower engine noise insulation remove. We've already done that as well. Transmission fluid needs to be between 35 and 45 degrees Celsius. So we'll hit continue. And in this case, it is 46 degrees Celsius. So we would need to wait for it to cool down a little bit more in order to proceed with the test. So we're going to wait here a minute, and we're going to see if it will cool down to 45 degrees. We'll see. Okay, so the transmission is cooled off. It says the transmission fluid temperature is now checked at a standstill with the engine running. Apply the parking brake, move transmission selector to P, start engine, let it idle, press continue. So for the purpose of this video, we're not going to start it up, but that's what you would do. And then we'll hit continue. Do not turn the engine off. Check the ATF level by removing the ATF check and fill plug from the transmission. So approximately every 30 seconds, a small splash of oil runs out of the clutch cooling from the check tube. The oil is to be ignored when checking. And then that is that plug I showed earlier, right? So the drain and fill and everything. Then it says top up ATF. Note an incorrect ATF level affects the operation of the transmission, which makes sense. There's a special tool for that. That's like a long tube that puts it in there. We continue. Install the ATF check and fill plug with a new seal on the ATF pan, and you're done. So, all right, so easy enough test as long as the temperature's in the right spot. Should be good to go. And like I said, it does require some special tooling to fill, drain. Always make sure to check the service information to check the other parts of the procedure. But yeah, you can use the scan tool. It walks you right through it, make sure the temperature is correct. So nice little scripted test.
All right, thanks for that. As you can see, it doesn't matter what functional test it is, doesn't matter who's running it, what vehicle it is, it has to be within those parameters. Otherwise, you might have to wait a little bit for it to cool off, like in that case. So I think that was a pretty nice little walkthrough there. It's kind of interesting how that is how you have to check the transmission fluid level, but hey, it is what it is, I guess. And with that, that's our time here today. So make sure you tune in for new diagnostic content every week. We'll be premiering a new video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. UK time, so make sure to check it out here on our YouTube channel. Please make sure you also subscribe, thumbs up, and ring that little notification bell so you'll know anytime we post new content. With that, time for questions. Now, if you have any questions, once again, if you're watching this on the premiere, just leave it in the live chat and we'll do our best to answer those. Otherwise, leave a comment under the video and we'll get to those as we monitor those comments as well. So I'd like to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to learning a little bit more about how you might be able to be more efficient at diagnosing vehicles using some of the information that we've been giving you today. Hopefully we'll see you next week, and we'll see you on any of our other videos. Have a good week, have a good night, and take care.